All right, we're recording. You're all set.
All right, so I will open the planning board meeting, being 5 o'clock on April 14th. And having quorum, I'll open the Town of Bridgewater Planning Board meeting. Tonight, we do not have any public hearings. We do have a public meeting to deliberate on the Broad Street project that's been before us a number of times. I won't read the full March 12th governor suspending the in-person meeting because we do not have a public hearing. So I don't need to go through the process of how the public needs to interact with us. But I will say that all roll call votes, at the end of this, if we do get to a point where we are comfortable with voting on the special permit and the site plan will be through roll call. I'm Patrick Driscoll, the chair. Mr. Raymond Ajemian is the vice chair. Mr. Michael McDonald, Mr. Jean Garino is the clerk, and Mr. Stephen Geller are all members of the 5 voting members of the board tonight. We also do have Miss Astrid Rojas and a new associate member that's here for the second time, Mrs. Julia Santacangelo. So they will not be participating in the deliberation of the voting, nor will the public or the applicant. So the way the process will work is that the 5 voting members will deliberate, comment, discuss back and forth the merits of the project and what's before us, try to come to some consensus at some point, and vote on the special permit and the site plan. So we cannot take any more public comment. We can't consider any letters that may or may not have been submitted after the close of the public hearing. So the board understands what we're doing. You are able to ask, obviously the 5 of us are here to talk and discuss it and try to come up with some sort of agreement. As to where this project goes from here. And we can ask clarifying questions to our staff. And I should note that our staff, Ms. Jennifer Burke, the Community Economic Development Director, is here with us this evening. And Mr. Azu Antonero is either here or will be joining us shortly. So, with that being said, we've had a long process on this project. We've had a lot of developer and the developers team input. We've had a lot of public input. We should consider it all and do what's best for the town. And with that, I don't know, I have prepared a kind of a flow chart that I work through to try to make sure we address all the issues. But before I ask Ms. Burke to pull that up, I'd like to get some, board comments as to where we stand, any major issues that we'd still like clarified from staff, any comments that you have on the project, and then try to come to some sort of a resolution tonight.
If I may,
Sure,
I'll just make a comment.
Sure, Mr. Jemmy.
This project started, what, 6 months ago, it seems. And my initial feeling was, I've said it a number of times, that the project was too big. And by being too big, it caused other problems, namely parking and the fact that the part of the parking would have to be across Broad Street. It presented, in my mind, a safety hazard. And I've always felt that if the project were smaller, in other words, less units, that would rectify, if not all, but some of the issues that we have. And I would still like to see a reduction in units. And I say this in in the idea of compromise. I think that in any compromise between two sides who are negotiating, if it's a good compromise, I suspect both sides are not going to be happy. I will tell you, quite frankly, from my point of view, I'm unhappy with myself for not being a stronger spokesman for the fact that it was too large at the very first meeting. There has been quite a bit of public input, and some of it was the positive input for this project basically argued that the Broad Street looks terrible, which it does, and that by putting these units in, it would revitalize Broad Street, which I think it will. I don't disagree with either one of those points. I've always felt that way. But there are others that argued that the details are the important part. In other words, you have to look at the details to make sure that the project is good. And the details bring up the point about parking, crossing the street, and so forth. So I think if we can try to, both sides, look at compromising on this, I think we can come up with something. I personally do not want to see this project fail. Even though it's not what I would have preferred, I would hope that this board could vote in the positive at the end of this meeting. Thank you.
Any other board comments? Mr. McDonald? Mrs. Carino?
I agree with Ray that, yes, I would like to see the project. And I've gone down there several times and parked my car and looked across and utilized my imagination as to what it could look like. So I would like to see a positive outcome in some way.
Anyone? Mr. McDonald, do you have anything to add at this point? Just so we can kind of get a feel for where you are and what we might be able to do to.
Yeah, I mean, my position pretty much remains unchanged. I think the project has fundamental issues, and I think the future of the town, not to be overly dramatic, but I think in a large way, the future of the town, the downtown area, is going to be decided by how this project goes. So I would rather not compromise on it beyond my willingness to, and I'd rather have no project than a bad project that I think will set the town down a bad stretch. So I'm currently not in favor of the project, unless we see a size reduction.
Okay. So, Mr. Geller, do you have anything to add at this point? I just want to give everybody a chance to speak before I ask Ms. Burke to.
I do. I mean, I think it's a great project. I think it will help revitalize the center of the town. And I also think that people also need to look at the big picture of things. You know, we plan on revitalizing the center, things moving forward. One of the big things people said is traffic going uptown. And I'm sure that in due time that all those lights up the center of town are going to get redone, rephased, retiming, just because we're going to revitalize everything, and there will be more traffic. These days you cannot do another traffic study, and that's all because of COVID, and you're going to end up using old data. So, I mean, I think it's a great project. I think it'll look nice for the town. And there'll be some little things I think that we'll be able to compromise on and move it forward.
Okay, so I think everybody, I think most of us, the goal is to move it forward. And I share many of the concerns that most of you share. I would like to see it done. I would like to see it revitalized. I would like to work with the developer in certain areas, and I would hope that the developer could work with us in certain areas. So does anybody, I don't want to, before I have Ms. Burke pull something up, I don't want to cut anybody off. Did the four of you have any other initial comments at this point? Has Mr. Antonero joined us yet, Ms. Burke?
No, he has not joined yet. I'm texting him to see if he has got tied up with something else.
Okay.
I'm hoping he can
Do
join.
you mind bringing up what I
but-
sent you this morning?
Sure. I just wanted to mention though, Pat, I believe associate members are allowed to deliberate, just not vote. So I'm not sure if you want to let them.
All right, yeah, I don't know where, yeah, that's however we want to work it. I'm not sure of the process. We haven't had associate members in a while, so.
Or the
Thank you. Can I speak? Thank you. So I would like to say that I've been a resident of Bridgewater for 9 years, and I have been, impressed by the community and what the community is hoping to build. And that I'm referring to, the sense of community, helping everyone. In addition to that, I drive through the center of the town every day. And I'm not sure if it's just as a caring resident or because of the experience, the experience that I've had as a new resident here, it's made me care more about Bridgewater than any other town that I've lived in the past. And driving through here, I have seen the businesses, sometimes they survive, sometimes they don't. And it's made me care more about the town, and that's why I joined the planning board. I wanted to be a more engaged resident, and I feel that Broad Street and the Broad Street project would bring Bridgewater forward. It has so much potential, and I think that it would be aligned with the goals that the town has. I could go on for hours about it, but I just want to show my full support for the project in general.
Thank you, Astrid. Just give everybody else a chance before I move on. All right, so could you pull up the first page of what I sent over to you, Ms. Burke? Because
Sure.
Ms. Burke had done a initial decision letter, and then I sent her some stuff and she sent some stuff, and I kind of tried to pull it together because some of the things that we had weren't allowed in zoning, and I tried to shift some of the density bonus points to other areas to benefit the developer. And I also tried to provide an opportunity where we could compromise to see the project go forward, but also listen to members of the board's concerns, the public's, the major amount of public comment that we've received by numerous people. And I don't want to ignore any of that. So I started off with number 18, and 1 through 17 are 1 through 17 are boilerplate standard conditions, right? So on the west side of Broad Street, the base density is 38 units. I believe it's 2.09 acres and 57 bedrooms. That's the base density. And as you know, we are allowed to do a transfer of development rights, and we to get to 26 units per acre. And there's also a ZBA approval that allowed us to go, I think it was from 54 to 67 in total. So what I did, and I don't want to go on and on forever, but what I did was I basically tried to write out everything we were looking for. So I said the developer will extinguish his development rights on the parcel A. I went on to say that, they'll extinguish their rights. They'll give us the easement for parking. They'll construct the parking lot. They'll maintain it, and there'll be deed restrictions and things put on that property so that we can have the public benefit for years going forward. So if you do the math, 8 units are allowed on that side by right. And if you recall, I said last week that Mr. Clarkson and Mr. Pascal were looking for 6 solar points. And I said I thought there was a way that we could mitigate that. By classifying it as a true TDR with these restrictions, we can pick up those 4 units that they were looking for in the solar area, and it just create 12 additional units on that west side and bring that to 50 units just by having them do the parking lot. There's no monetary contribution. There's no solar needed. And instead of considering it one parcel, so to speak, we do that through a transfer of development rights. So that's one option that we have to increase density. Then there was a developers agreement done by our town manager, Mr. Dutton, and the applicants. And what I did there was I took the, I think at the last meeting, I asked the developer if they were most likely going to give the cash to try to get that property. So I came up with, I said, the developer will make a cash payment to the town for $352. The payment will be made prior to, now initially we had that first mitigation payment due after the first occupancy permit, but the developer asked for that to be delayed because of the cost of the parking lot and other things that we may be asking for in addition to the parking lot within the right of way. So that's 4 additional units we can grant. Then the developer, we went back and forth about the common, and we talked about a payment of $350,000 for the purpose of restoring the town common, war memorial, and any other improvements deemed appropriate by the town manager within the town common and surrounding area. This payment shall be made to the town of Bridgewater prior to the issuance. And I moved that to the, did I get that right? Did I say? Prior to the issuance of the 3rd occupancy permit. And then taking into account, public comment about height, about density, about everything else, I floated this last meeting, and I think this is a good compromise. Because my feeling is that everything on the plan is the responsibility of the developer. There's going to be major utility connections. There's going to be, 12 big, holes, three per lot, plus potential utility trench across the street. There's going to be a lot of disruption to that area in terms of utilities. So to have the developer use his own $350,000 to improve that area, that's something that personally I'm going to be asking for anyway. That's part of the project. That's what we'd be asking any other developer, just like we did with the small building down the street, the laundromat. We made him do all the sidewalks, the granite, etc. So as part of the project. So that's an opportunity to make the project a little bit smaller. The developer doesn't have to pay us the $350. There's 5 units on the 4th floor of what I call the bowling alley building that could be removed. So we'd address some of the concerns about height. Either end of the project would be smaller buildings. The 2 middle buildings would go up to 4 feet. It would bring the parking closer in line to where it needs to be on the west side, because as we noted, there are 6 parking spaces short just for the residential on that side, so they would have to cross the street. So I just thought that would be a good compromise. Let's remove that, remove the 4th floor of the 5 units on that building, and move forward. Going down, I put in, we talked about this, the payments would be adjusted based on the CPI, but I want some, discussion on this. Do we want the CPI? Do we want a fixed interest? Do we want a fixed interest or the greater of the CPI, just to make sure that mitigation money is still worth $350, whenever we get it. And then solar energy. So the developer on the current architectural plans shows solar panels, and this is another area we can grant, but we can only grant 2, because at the last meeting, we said it was only going to be on the 2 middle buildings, the big buildings, and it was going to be on only the 4th floor. The plans show solar panels on the 3rd and 4th floor. So I don't know if this is something we want to grant or not grant, but this is the solar energy. The developer shall install a solar system on the roofs of building E and F in the locations shown on the architectural plans. Should the developer not have a solar system operational prior to the issuance of the final building permit, the additional units granted for the solar energy will be removed from the final building. For this, the board grants an additional 1 unit for both buildings E and F for a total of 2. So if you did everything above, that would reduce the height of one of the buildings and hopefully satisfy some people, remove a floor and a couple of units from the project, free up a little bit of parking. And the developer wouldn't have to make that payment. So I don't know if you want me to stop here and we talk about the bonus points and then we go into everything else, or if that's enough compromise for people, not enough, or where we are from here.
That's your call, Mr. Chairman. Do you want to go back and?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain, and I probably took too much time, but I think this was the major issue, and then the other issues we can work through. So A, does anybody have any comments, concerns on A? I mean, is there?
I'll just repeat myself, and this is just an aside. I mean, I think the TDR was a mistake. I think the ZBA made a mistake allowing it. It doesn't, in my mind, doesn't meet the requirements of a TDR, but at the same time, again, in terms of compromising, I'm going to go along with it. Your point about the, what was it, the, so if you scroll down a little bit where you, with the, your point E3, E3 about the streetscape improvements, there's no question, I agree with you on that. That's one small way of reducing the density.
Well, and what I did there too is I tried to give the developer a break, in that in his developer's agreement, he was asking for there was 6 units there.
Yeah.
But by shifting some of these things around, we were able to get, we were able to give him an additional unit, basically for nothing.
So what we're doing is reducing it by 5 units. Is that what you're saying?
Right, because, well, the developer's agreement says that line item should be 6, right?
Right.
But if I switch, because they're asking for solar at 6, they can't get solar at 6. So I shifted 4 of those up under like the TDR classification. The math works that either 2 or 3 has to be 5. So I gave them the benefit of 2 being 6 and 5, the one we're removing being the smaller number. And then if you look at the plans, the 4th floor of the bowling alley only has 5 units on it. So you'd have a 3-story building, a 3 or 4, a 3 or 4, a 3. And we try to, I'm trying to satisfy as many people as I can on the board, and also, make myself a little more comfortable with it, and also listen to all the good public comment that we had that we should consider and take into consideration. So
I agree, Mr. Chairman. If you scroll down a little bit more, just one more comment. The idea, I'm looking at the payment. Any payment now received by the town on prior to 12/31/2023 shall be subject to an annual maximum interest rate based on the Boston Brockton Nashua Consumer Price Index /CPI. Never heard of the Boston Brockton Nashua Consumer Price Index, but
I don't either. I assume
that's minor though. My point is this:
I assume Ms. Breck's smarter than me, and that's something she had in her version, so I just copied it.
The Consumer Price Index. But my only thought here is this: that if inflation stays low and the Consumer Price Index is at 1%, there's really no pressure put upon the payment at any one time. I would argue that that should probably be at least 5%, that if it's not paid by that time.
So that's why, so do you want both? Do you want the greater of? Do you want a minimum?
Greater
of
of is fine. Yeah, the greater of is fine. That's just my thought. That's all. I mean, that's, others can disagree, of course. I'm just saying that there's no pressure to pay the amount on time with low inflation.
Do you have any comments on F? You just why you have the floor. Do you want both roofs done for that 2 units? Or are you okay with just the 4th floor of one building? The plans show the 3rd and 4th floor.
Right.
At the last meeting, it was represented, it would just be the 4th floor roof.
I don't know. I mean, I can go either way on that. I like, ideally, it'd be good to have them on all four roofs, but that's not a deal breaker for me.
Okay. Any other comment? Is that, I mean, is that, does everybody understand how we work the bonus points, and we have to determine that they're in the public good and for the town of Bridgewater at large? Does anybody want to change anything? Does anybody have any questions, concerns? Just give me some feedback.
I support the removal of subsection 3 there. I think that's necessary. What they were trying to get originally with being able to use that cash for their own necessary improvements was ridiculous. So I think that's a necessary change. For section A though, with the parking lot, it's my opinion that parking lot is going to be minimal impact for the public at large. I think it's again another necessary part of the project anyways. So I think to call that a public good worth 12 additional units is a little mind-boggling to me. So I think that's far too high of a boon to grant for something that they would need to do anyways, in my opinion.
And maybe I shouldn't have put 12 additional units. It's to the left is the math. It's the 8 plus the 1.5. So essentially, if they just develop that side, they could get the 8. But they're moving them across the street, so we give them 12. So they get 4 by moving them across the street. I should have said. I'm sorry, but that's I just to make the math work. It works out that we got to move 12 to that side.
Right.
So, all right. I mean, maybe we should come back after everybody has a chance to talk and vote on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through F, and then we know where we stand with the bonus points. If that's okay.
Just wanted to let you know that the town engineer is on the meeting now if you have questions for him.
All right, all right, let's try to work through this, and then we can ask the town engineer questions, because the rest of the conditions are really site related.
Okay.
You did a good job on this, Pat. It was very well thought out.
A couple bottles of wine, I can write anything.
No, but I think it truly is a fair compromise.
Well, and then if it's not enough for people, I think we can either, I mean, if we need a couple more, we can reduce the mitigation in 2 proportionally, or we can remove the 2 solar. I mean, I'm just looking for feedback. I wanted to have a starting point, and then if people are comfortable where we are, we can move forward. If it's not enough, we can find another place to chisel away at, I guess.
Yeah, I like that part on the streetscapes, because I was thinking about the laundromat and how we had asked them to take care of the sidewalks there when they did that one.
Right. So I think that's going to be a condition further on anyway, and that's why Mr. Antonero is going to be key in guiding us as to what needs to be done in the right of way. So if I don't know if you guys want to go through A through F individually and vote on them, or if we want to say that you're okay with the way it's presented, or we need more compromise. Don't all talk at once.
Part two, parts 1 and 2. Why is for the same amount of money? Why does one give them 4 additional units and one give them 6?
Good question. So the developers agreement was vague. It referred to it refers to 2 units per acre. So 2 units per acre is roughly 5. So 1 would be 5, 2 would be 5, and 3 would be 5. But then it said for 6 additional units. So I think what happened is as the project evolved and land area came out, the developers agreement probably was not updated. So in E1, it says it was 5 units, but the developer had to go out and negotiate and purchase and turn over to the town the real estate adjacent to the Academy building. At the last meeting, I asked what he thought he was going to do, and I believe the answer was at this point he'd just write the check for 352.
Yeah.
But he asked if it could be delayed to the second building permit, and then in the language of the developers agreement, if he didn't purchase it outright, he lost a unit, so that was 4. I mean, we could make it not 2 says in that 350 for the common says 2 units per acre or 6 units. So if you wanted to just say 2 units per acre, we'd end up at 5 units for that category. So that would be an option to reduce, another unit somewhere.
Right.
If, based on what you said, Pat, if the 4th floor was removed, how many units would that take away?
Well, that's why I kind of backed into the math. That's 5 units. That's why I kind of backed into it. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just looking for an easy way to compromise without having to do a major revision of plans and
I personally like that idea.
What is that, Mr. Jimmy?
The 5 units and eliminating the 4th floor.
Can you clarify what you're saying? So item 3, so the question Michael asked was, why is item 2 6 units and item 1 4 units? And my answer was that because item 2 said 2 units per acre, which is 5 units. But so you're saying reduce the 6 to 5, or just reduce in item 2 and remove 3, or just remove 3?
To be perfectly honest with you, either way is fine with me. Just remove some units.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but this means that they're taking 1 floor off, right?
Right.
Just that one building.
Correct.
Just that
Correct.
one building that's stepped back. Correct.
Right.
So I don't want to misrepresent it. There will be 2 buildings with a 4th floor still.
In the back, right.
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 And I know it's everybody's preference to have smaller buildings, but I just don't know if that's doable to get those other floors removed. So at least the buildings on either end will be small, they'll step up. And that's kind of why I targeted that 5 unit cluster and tried to make it work with the mitigation.
And the 2 middle units are set back the 4th floor is set back.
Correct. It was on this building as
Stepped
well.
back.
So I'm open to recommendations. So I want to try to get to the density thing, and then we can work through everything else. If there's a desire to do a little more, and we can do more. If we're happy with this compromise, we can move forward.
Can we go back over the solar, how we're doing the units for solar and where we're at that?
Right, the plan shows that the architectural drawings show future solar panels with a dotted line on the roofs on all 4 buildings, okay? At the last meeting, the developer said that they would only be on the 2 middle buildings. I believe that's E and F. And it was reduced to just the 4th story. The plan shows on those 2 buildings that it's on the 3rd and 4th story, and there's arrows to dotted line that says future solar panels. So the way I have it written is the developer shall install a solar system on the roofs of buildings E and F in the locations shown on the architectural plans. So do we want to hold them to that for those 2 additional units, or are we okay with reducing that to just the 4th floor roof? The section with the 4th floor.
So again, just to clarify, so if we go by what the applicant asks for, and then it has been said that they only want to put solar panels on the 4th floor, then that will reduce 2 units, correct?
Well, no, the bylaw doesn't stipulate, the ordinance doesn't stipulate what percentage of the roof. It says if they provide a solar or green roof, you could give 1 unit for each of those buildings.
Right.
So but what's proposed on the plan for those 2 buildings is different than what we discussed at the last meeting.
Right.
So my question is do we want to hold it to the plans for those 2 units, or do we want to give them some latitude and just say we're fine with the section of the building that has 4 stories?
To add something to that, Patrick, if you can hear me.
Sure.
Can
Well, we're not
You
supposed to deliberate.
can't, I'm sorry, you can't speak.
Um,
On the 3rd floor would even be effective, or at the 4th floor, just block them, make them effectively useless anyways. I mean, no sense having them put in useless solar panels, but I don't know enough about the topic to say if that would be the case or not, to be honest with you.
Michael, you cut in and out. I apologize. Could you repeat what you said?
Oh yeah, sorry. So one thing I would wonder is if the solar panels on the 3rd floor would even be effective if with the 4th floor kind of blocking them out a little bit. No sense in having them put in useless solar panels, just waste money if they're not going to be effective. But I don't have enough expertise in that area to say if that'd be the case or not.
Can I get some thoughts on the solar energy piece?
Whether they put it on the 4th floor or the 4th and the 3rd, we're still talking 2 additional units, right?
Correct. It's up to us if we see it as a public benefit or, yeah, it's right. So we have to determine if it's up to the board. I mean, so if
I
we
mean,
want
I'm fine if he just puts it on the 4th floor. I mean, I think it would still work on the 3rd floor, but they would just be angled a little bit different going up the street. You wouldn't see it anyways, but I'm fine with it just on the top floor. Setback.
I would be too, but if it's just on the top floor, then I would take 1 unit away.
well, it's on 2 different buildings.
I understand that.
So I
understand.
think the way
Not
this,
covering the entire building though.
but I think the way the zoning reads is if he provides a green roof or a solar roof on a building, we can grant them 1 additional unit. So
That is correct.
I just don't know how we have to determine, I think it's either good for both or it's not good for both.
That's correct.
Or it's good, you know what I mean? I see what you're saying, Mr. Jemian. If he's doing half the building, we give him half a unit, but I think that the way that the zoning reads, we have to either decide we're okay with half the section of the building that's 4 stories high, or if we want it on the entire building.
Well, if we're going to give 2 units, and that's the way the unit is for the building, then I would argue that they have to do 3rd and 4th floors. If they're not going to do 3rd and 4th floors, then it's not doing the building in my mind. We don't give any units then.
All right, and that's what's shown on the architectural plans that we have before us, 3rd and 4th.
Right.
So do you want to just leave that the way it is per the plans?
if we're going to show the 2 units, yes, leave it the way it is.
All right, so that's how I left it, even though we had the conference, because E and F in the location shown. Now, the plans also show solar on the other buildings, but that's in the last meeting we had, and I'm looking at the notes right here, it was that the solar was reduced to those 2 middle buildings and just the 4th floor. All right, so we can do 2 units for solar.
One thing I'd like a little clarification on with that, determining if it's a public good. That collected energy, is that going to be used exclusively in the buildings? Does any extra go into the town?
The solar energy, you don't have to determine that's a public good. That's a straight out. He gets those units if he provides solar energy, because we're a green community and we're trying to encourage solar use.
I see.
I mean, I'm trying to get through the density. So are people okay with 62? Do we need to take more? I mean, I know Michael and Ray indicated that the buildings are too big, but we're removing at least 1 4th floor this way. Is that more comfortable? Is that not comfortable enough? Is that, give me some feedback and we can go back up and try to rework this if we have to, but I'd like to get through this 18 if we can.
No, I like this one. And the solar, the 2 additional units for the solar as faced.
So you would like to leave it as it's written and as it's shown on the plan, Mrs. Guarino,
Yeah.
for the 2 buildings?
Yes. Because I think that's how, and that's what I was just looking for. I think that's how it is. If you put it on a roof, they got 1 unit.
Mr. McDonald and Mr. Jemian, do you have any other recommendations or?
No, I agree with Mrs. Guarino. I mean, as much as I'd love to see more units taken away, if we're talking the 5 units, taking 5 units away and cutting off the 4th floor of the bowling alley building, that will not stop me from voting for this plan.
I just want to remind everybody, though, that you're giving him the number of units. You're designing the building, so he may decide to remove those units from somewhere else and not take a whole floor off the bowling alley building. So I just want to remind everybody of that.
Well, couldn't we limit under the special permit? Couldn't we limit that?
No, you
building
cannot
to 3 floors?
design a building for him.
All right.
Yeah, I think you did a great job on this draft. But I mean, in openness, I don't think the developer is willing to go down to a number of units that I would be particularly comfortable with. But you did an excellent job in writing this out. I think it's a good attempt at a compromise.
Well, I think that some of us, including myself, will probably be uncomfortable with the density, and the developer probably won't be happy with the density. But I think, as Mr. Jemian said, that means it's probably somewhat fair, but all right. Do we want to vote on this? Do we want to move on? Do we want to take more units off? Let's move on if we can. Move on. All right.
Yeah.
Continue down. So before we get into the rest of it's most of the stuff that we've talked about. Ms. Burke, these are highlighted in yellow. You can't see it. That's kind of how I wrote it and would like to keep it. But if we determine we can't do that, then I'd like to see the 4th floor come off that building G. And there are 5 units there, so it seems to make it an easy solution and keep that building 3 stories. So based on that, if you do the math, it comes out to a total of 62 units if we adopt everything up top with a maximum of 93 bedrooms as opposed to 100. So we take away 7 bedrooms. The 4 buildings, will be built to the plan of record as of with any modifications that we discussed. So Parcel A would have 0 units because it's going to have that restriction. Parcel D would have the 4 units as proposed. Parcel F would have the 23, E and F would have the 23, and parcel G we'd reduce to 12. So from the, I think it's 17 now. Mr. Jemian, before we go forward, do you want to ask Mr. Antonero about crosswalks and things of that nature, or do you want me to keep going and when we get to that section, we can get to that section?
Assuming he's going to be on the call the entire time, I could wait till we get, if you want to do
All right, so
crosswalk.
the next ones are all things that we talked about. So we talked about the walk-up staircase on buildings E, F, and G will be removed and replaced with a hatch.
Right.
Units are limited to 1 and 2 bedrooms. We talked about dining rooms and the potential for those becoming bedrooms and the concern of that. So we said then, anything not labeled a bedroom can't be advertised as a bedroom or used as a bedroom. Rooms labeled as a dining room. We talked about a 4 foot. We talked about a 5 foot.
I would go with 6 foot.
All right. Any other comments on that? We can just hold the place for 6 feet there. 23. I'd like to see if we can leave this in here, Ms. Burke, and then if Jason Rollins says we can't, then we can remove it. But because that has 5 units on the 4th floor of building G. The first floor of each building shall be used for commercial space only. That's in our zoning already. No residential uses are permitted on the ground floor. This is also in zoning. The building shall be built. I know we've asked the question, but the building inspector, we should just verify this with the building inspector that 60% of each of the building street facing facade contains windows. This is something that I wrote and then Ms. Burke wrote, and I kind of combined them. It's landscaping and lighting shall strictly adhere to the approved plans and shall be completed basically as buildings are phased in. And the developer shall repair, replace, or install any damaged, dead, missing landscape features, plants for a period up to 2 years after the issuance. The parking lot on parcel A, we talked about this already, and that's why we moved one of the mitigation payments down, shall be completed prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit. So whichever building he builds first, I think the plan was to do D, the parking lot and whatnot would be done in conjunction with that. So 28, 29, and 30 is really where we need Mr. Antonero. So why don't we ask our site questions to Mr. Antonero, then we can go back to this.
You want to take them in order, or do you want to, whatever?
Well, I can start with Mr. Antonero if you want. I have a couple of questions, but I would like to, if the board wants to speak first, go ahead, Mr. Jemian.
Well, my main question is number 30, crosswalks and the turning conditions. Again, repeating myself, but if size is too large, as it is in my opinion, even with the reduction, we have a problem of parking. But even more important to me is the safety. And I still consider that's the primary point of people that will have to cross that street at various times of the day and night to get to their apartment. In my mind, it is absolutely essential that we have a safe crosswalk with warning signs or whatever. And I'm not the engineer. And I think Mr. Antonero is the one that will have to make sure that we do have something that he feels comfortable with and that makes us all feel semi-comfortable that it will work. And so I would, one of the conditions I would say that Mr. Antonero has to show, I think he has emailed the group on possible crosswalk. I just would like to know what the crosswalk is going to look like and what the lighting is going to be for that crosswalk. He can comment on it. I mean, I'm not the expert. I'm just saying I want a safe crosswalk.
Mr. Antonero?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I believe what I have articulated for the board in terms of crosswalk design and requirement will satisfactorily, in my opinion, assuage the safety concerns that Mr. Jamian has expressed. If you recall, I noted the last hearing that the safety of the public must be paramount. So to that end, I suggested and still insist that the inconvenience that might be caused to snow plowing and removal operation, it's not, in my opinion, significant enough to outweigh the benefit of having bump out for pedestrian refuge during the time they wait for crossing. Now, the flashing yellow light is typical of our Mass DOT crossing guidelines. So in other words, that light will flash, typical of your yellow flashing light, as vehicles approach and continue with their travel. Now that timing, the design of the signal is such that when pedestrians would want to cross, the red light, it will be crossing on demand. So when they press the button, that button then will activate the yellow light to become now steady red for a duration of about 90 seconds to allow for pedestrian crossing. After the pedestrians have safely crossed, it also shows the amount of time that you have to cross. So at the end of that, when it's 0, it will beep to alert the pedestrians that the time has expired. So they have to wait for the next cycle. When the time expires, the light turns back to a blinking yellow. And we propose the different both directions of approaching vehicles, northbound and southbound, strategic locations for placement of warning signs for oncoming vehicles, so that they are aware of pedestrian crossing traffic light prior to them reaching that destination. And that is really the impetus for limiting the number of crossings. As much as we want to move pedestrians across east to west, and west to east, you want to limit the number of such crossings to minimize conflicting motions and movements. And so that one central crossing will be sufficient with the proposed lighting, traffic lighting.
If I may, Mr. Antonero, where would the light be? Would the light be such that cars would be able to see it?
Oh yeah, it's not a single light. It's two. Usually 2 are required. One on the east side and one on the west side.
On the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Ray, can I ask a question? Are you all set if I ask a question?
Just one quick question. Do you have a projected design of this crosswalk, or something that's standard design?
Your standard 8-foot wide striping on the pavement. Your standard 8-foot wide. Some crosswalks are 4 feet, some are 6. Given the expected volume of pedestrian movement, 8 will be my recommendation, 8-foot wide crosswalk.
And would it be colored? Would it be yellow, white? What would you recommend?
Or will be a reflecting white.
Ah.
Because
Okay.
the reflecting the yellows don't show very well at night.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Antonero, I touched base with you on the work within the right of way.
Yes, sir.
So it's been my, I think I was pretty clear at the last meeting that all the work shown on Mr. Silva's plans and Mrs. this Janus plans, would be something we ask for anyway in our outside of mitigation. So that area is going to have major, disruption to the right of way, to the sidewalks, to the street. If you look at each, those are big buildings, they have big connections. Even though we're considering it one project, every project is being built on its own lot with big utility connections coming in. Potentially there's 12 cuts into the road, sewer, water, gas for each building. Crossing the sidewalks, having the road damaged, building the bump outs to connect his two parcels safely. Could you explain to me what we'll be looking for in terms of the town for sidewalk reconstruction, pavement, and when you see it in the phasing of this project and all the utility connections coming into the site?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, other than the preposition of the statement that you made, basically describing what might be done. So if I understand your question correctly, yes, there will be several crossings for utilities. And in that case, I will not, I will be looking for a continuous paving as opposed to trench patching work. I would want to see the full width of the roadway from the northerly end of the project to the southerly end of the project. That section of the roadway completely redone and paved over so that you don't have several locations of settlement. And here's the other reason why I will say that. If you're just repairing trenches, what you're usually using is one of those handheld compaction rollers. Those do not have adequate weight on them to provide the necessary compaction. So you're going to end up getting shallow swales along the pavement. But if you cut a full width from end to end, that would allow you to use a vibratory 11-ton roller to achieve uniform compaction. And then you will be able to use either Blonox or Baba Green, the full spreader that used for spreading asphalt, instead of the individuals logging asphalt in wheelbarrows. So that would be my recommendation, and that's for the work. Do all the utility work once, and then clean up the roadway, and that would be my recommendation. Now, in terms of the sidewalk, however, because it's concrete and requires a little more time for setting, if you look at some of the construction work that is done, like in major, you have to look at this as a major street construction work. They have to provide a temporary fenced walkway, if you will, that allows people, and you have to, during that construction period, eliminate allowed parking that you would ordinarily allow on the roadway through the frontage of their project. So you have to have a little fenced in walkway that protects pedestrians during construction. And I would definitely wait on the sidewalk, because it's concrete sidewalk, for that to be done when construction is done, or when at least heavy equipment operation in and out of the building, like forklifts that they will use to bring stuff, to lift stuff up to the higher floors during construction, or those mini cranes and your scaffolding work. So when you have all your scaffolding set up, and you have platforms set up on the scaffolding. Now that sidewalk, those people walking through shouldn't be pedestrians should be walking under that false work or the scaffolding work. That's why you're gonna need a little passageway adjacent to that fenced off for pedestrians to walk through as they walk north south or south north.
So Mr. Antonero, I took a stab at trying to draft all these things in item number 28. But I
Yes,
think, I think if you, I mean, I think that the main thing is we want what's shown on the plan in terms of curb cuts, utility connections, sidewalks, and roadway pavement from the northerly edge to the southerly edge of the project done on both sides of the street.
yes.
But as far as timing, as far as these temporary structures, I mean, I think we'll be relying on you to help us clean up this item in the decision letter as we finalize it after this hearing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When do you, in the phasing though, do you want all this work done before the first building permit or the first occupancy permit?
Well, so the work on the street pavement itself, it will not make any sense at least from a construction standpoint. It will not make sense in my view for them to do one building at a time in terms of utilities. When they have the equipment and labor and there were contractor and their police detail available, they gotta pull all the utilities off of the road into at least right up to the property line, which will be right at the back of the sidewalk, okay? Then the paving work must take place because the structural requirement, the structural design of that Route 18 pavement is 30. You're looking at almost 5 inches of pavement that will be required. So that will, as long as they roll it and pave it, I would want to see the finished work done as soon as they pull off the utilities. And I would expect them to pull the utilities before they dig the first foundation anyway.
Okay.
So that needs to be done. I cannot see given a certificate of occupancy before that work is done.
All right, so what, Mr. Silva shows some detail on his plan and it shows concrete sidewalk and it shows, but if we approve this evening, I think Mr. Silva could update that plan to show the limit of paving that we're requiring the developer to do, the limit of the concrete sidewalk, a detail for the paving, a detail for the sidewalk. So we're all on the same page. Is that something you would expect?
That would be absolutely correct. And then that will give an opportunity for the town engineer to review it thoroughly. And but that can be a condition of approval, Mr. Chairman. If you recall, not exactly in terms of construction, but in terms of sequencing, when the board approved the Fruit Street, it required that the traffic signage be coordinated with the town engineer. And I think where we know exactly what we need done, it does not change the project design. Therefore, since it does not change the actual project design, that can be a condition of approval. And I will be very happy to craft a proper language and provide guidance even to Mr. Silva to make sure that they meet our expectations.
All right, so 28, I put in there as basically just my, just for discussion points so we could have this conversation. So you can wipe that out and start over, but just so it's on the record that we had this discussion and what we expect from the developer as a condition. I think 28 can hold that for now, but before we sign the final decision letter, you'll craft everything that needs to be done within the right of way based on this discussion.
And circulate it to the board. to make sure that it captures the expectation of the board. Yes.
And then, I mean, I would expect that we have all that done. So I hope that, that's all, taken care of. So, all right.
Yeah, and if it's a condition of approval, then it has to get done. And I will make sure that it gets done.
All right. So, all right. 29, Mr. Silva, in his office submitted, curbing. I didn't copy it, but, hopefully he could update the plans, prior to final sign off that shows vertical granite everywhere within the road layout and concrete within the project. I couldn't spell Antonero without looking it up, so that's why it's AOE.
But you and me both. I have to look it up every time I write it, believe it or not.
So, he provided us a condition on turning and crosswalks, which can be incorporated into the final set by Mr. Silva. Ms. Burke, the other thing I had just a question on is there's no signs proposed on any of these buildings right now. Should we condition it that any signs need to be approved, or do we just not, the zoning take care of that for us?
I believe the zoning will take care of that. They would need a sign permit from the building inspector. So I believe that would be taken care of through that process.
Just to be clear, should we put that in there that any signs have to go through the building inspector, or?
It's standard in any sign, so I'm not sure that you need to do that. But
All right.
It's your decision.
Another condition I had that even some councilors asked me to incorporate it is that, the site looks pretty lousy now, and this project could go on for years. I know Mr. Dutton gave him up to 10 years to complete the project. That's what we talked about initially. Hopefully it doesn't take that long, but what could we put in there for site cleanup, for fencing, for screening, just to try to make sure the site's, one, secure, two, clean? Is that something that you would like to help us with, Mr. Antonero, in terms of, because you're saying there might be some safety fences needed anyway, correct?
That is correct.
Is that something in terms of a site cleanup that you could help us craft for an additional condition?
Yes, sir.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, two quick things. One, Mr. Antonero talked about the crosswalk. The condition also stipulates the turning, which he has already mentioned. And I just want to point out that he will also give us ideas about no left turns at certain times. The point about cleanup, I think that's a good point. I would also ask that if Mr. Pascal intends to continue try to sell the property, that the signs that he has up be taken down and more suitable signs, smaller signs be put up, and not the large sign on the building on the bowling alley and the one across the street. I think they are unsightly by themselves.
Well, you can't require that. So.
All right, so that's kind of what I had for conditions. I don't know if we want to add anything else.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
I think considering this project and the importance of the town and the long-term aspects of it, I think the conditions should be reviewed by town council to make sure that we're not skipping something here or missing something.
Right, and I'd like to get an opinion on, I mean, if we just have to remove the 5 units, or if we can ask for that 4th floor to be removed.
What I'm saying is I think the whole thing should be looked at, everything.
I agree. So basically what I'm proposing is that this be, I'll work with, Ms. Burke and Jasmine in the office, and we can finalize the decision letter, but just to make sure we discuss all these things, I put this together, and I'd like as much as possible in the decision letter to make sure it's clear when mitigation is due, the number of units, the number of bedrooms, design, all that stuff. So
Okay, Mr. Chairman, one of the, if I may, just a point of information. Typically, for building permits in Massachusetts town, developer has to provide to the building department, whoever the contractors are, at least their workout compensation insurance. Given the scope of this project, and we usually will require street opening permit, but the amount that we at least have right now on the books for street opening permit pales in comparison. I think there should be a language in there, and that is, and I'm glad that Mr. Jimian suggested that we're having the town council review this. There has to be a provision in there for the developer to maintain adequate insurance coverage for work within the public way, the sidewalk, and that would be very important.
Well, in 28, and I'm sure you haven't read it, Mr. Antonero, because I just did it today. So I said in there prior to, we ask for a cash bond for work within the public way typically, right? So I put that in there. I don't know if you'll be looking for that or not, but
yeah, the cash bond, Mr. Chairman, only addresses the physical work. It does
Correct.
not address our liability to the general public, because and again, it's important that the town council looks at it, because if there's an accident there, problem, let's say a forklift or a crane tips over, you want to make sure that the town is also protected, because people don't usually look for a contractor. They look at who they think has the most deep pocket. And I've seen people sue municipalities for the simple reason that municipality give a permit. So that is one area. I've made my points in the past about how this project will enhance the value in the neighborhood and staff property values. But at the same time, we want to also make sure that that our risk exposure to the town it's minimized during at least during the construction phase. And that usually is again, as I stated earlier, the bonding for the road work is simply saying that the road will be repaired and fixed and yada. But the safety aspect, the liability aspect to the general public needs to rest with the developer.
All right, so number 28 is yours, Mr. Antonero, and if we could have that done before we send it to Attorney Rollins, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, any additional concerns, comments?
We're gonna leave it up to Mr. Antonero to discuss the conditions of the turnings.
Well, he provided that to us in an email already. Did you see that, Mr. Geller? He provided times and directions, and
I don't recall seeing that email, to be honest.
I think what we're looking for there is, I don't think he needs to do any more on that. We just want Mr. Silva to incorporate that.
Okay.
I know this won't make everybody happy, but let me know give me some other suggestions, or move it to a vote, or let's talk about it some more, something.
Can we go back up to, I forget what number it was. I mean, it's a small thing. Stop right there. Go back to number 22. So 22 talks about the room labels and a 5-foot wide opening. And I'm just wondering if that falls back under, we can't design his buildings. I know that, Sir Jamie said 6 feet. I don't know what the difference between 5 feet and 6 feet is. We have to leave it up to our building inspector to make sure that everything's labeled and clearly stated as 1 bedroom. So I'm not quite sure what the 1 foot would gain in designing that. So I would tend to leave that at 5 feet.
Jimmy, are you okay with that?
Not really. I think 6 is better. Just my opinion. I think we had talked about this extra room a couple meetings ago, and it was referred to, I believe, as an office. And the room came back now as a dining room, essentially the same room with a opening the width of a door. And I believe it was Mr. Clarkson that made the reference that to make sure that people don't use it as a bedroom, the building inspector could check. Well, I just don't think that enforcement should be necessarily thrown on the building inspector, that if we design something right from the start, that we won't have that problem. So I think 6 feet would ensure that the building is not used as a bedroom.
Any other board comments on that one? Just try to get some consensus on it.
Well, I mean, a typical door is 30 inches going into a bedroom. So, we doubled it by going up to 5 feet. Is your typical door going into a bedroom. So, it's a small minutia of a point. So, whatever the rest of the board really wants.
I mean, for me, I could go with 5 or 6. I prefer 6 just because we don't want it to turn into a bedroom, and I don't want it just to be door height. I like it floor to ceiling. That way, 2 doors can't just be hung on it. I think that we only allow 1 and 2 bedroom units down there. We don't even have enough parking, or just we will have enough parking. It's only about 1.3 units, 1.3 spaces per unit on that side of the street. So I think it's important to limit the number of bedrooms just because of the parking situation. I mean, we already know we're tight for parking. We're already reducing it by 40% of what's required. So. Anything else, Mr. Geller?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, so this is what I have kind of worked through based on what I anticipated or thought we might have for comments based on the last meeting. So are people comfortable with this? To send this to adopt this as basically a decision letter along with the standard conditions, and send it to Attorney Rollins for review once Mr. Antonero and Ms. Burke add a few things to it that we discussed this evening?
Just a procedural point. If we vote on it tonight, I'm not sure what we're voting on, since 1, there has to be some changes made here, and 2, Attorney Rollins has to look at it. Wouldn't it be better to have Attorney Rollins look at it, clean up the whole conditions, and we actually vote at the next meeting? I think that might be the.
Well, the decision letter still has to be worked on and signed. So, I mean, before we sign it, we could have it come to the next meeting. If it's ready for the next meeting, we could have it. Could we do something like that, Ms. Burke?
Sure. I mean, Attorney Rollins is only going to be looking at it for legalities and making sure that you didn't put anything illegal in there. So I'm not sure.
Ray, the language.
He's not going to be writing anything for you.
The language can be changed a little bit or modified. It's just in the public meeting, we have to get everything out on the table and discuss it. So like Mr. Antonero's language is going to have to be added. That's not even crafted yet. So before I sign, typically on a decision letter, I will go in, or you'll go in as the vice chair and sign it. We we have time on this, like at one of the next meetings before it's signed, we could review it. So we could certainly review it before signature at another meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add, Azu speaking here, I do think that you have crafted a decision, and actually more power to you. You did a pretty good job for somebody that does not work full time. Maybe we should have actually, and I mean this not in a pejorative way, we should have a special position for you in the town, I guess. So, but and that is because you did a good job. I think you've got the decision, you've got the basically the conditions of approval. And so that means you already have the framework. Delaying yet another vote, because all you need, when you vote tonight, you're not signing a document. You're not signing a document. That is something that you usually, for example, when you approve a subdivision, okay? You get along, we give you a decision. You don't sign that decision until a final review that, okay, this is what we agreed to. You don't need to, I'm afraid that if you push this down the road again, if you push this down the road, all you are really doing is yet continuing your discussions. And I guarantee you, you end up having the same number of discussions as you have tonight. So at some point, you got to make a decision. No matter how difficult it is, you got to make a decision, yay or nay. And I think, in my opinion, there should be a yay because you've put in an awful lot of work into it. And then before you sign it, you can bring it back and say, okay, this is what the town council have reviewed and come up with. You know? Yeah, so that language can be reviewed during that period, the intervening period, before it's signed and filed with the town clerk. So I really don't see what you would accomplish other than delay your decision. I don't see what you would accomplish not acting on it tonight. This is precisely why you have this meeting tonight.
So Ms. Burke, we typically, I'd come in and sign a decision letter. To get this all done and to have Mr. Silver update the plans and get updated architecturals and everything, probably won't have it done for next week. But the first meeting in May, we could probably have the decision letter done, reviewed. The applicant can have the updated plans, and in that first meeting, we can review the decision letter before signature, correct?
Well, so I don't think we need to bring it to a whole meeting to review. I mean, we can certainly distribute the decision letter to the board members via email and have them comment to staff individually if there's any issues. There's no need for additional discussion on that. Okay. And then have you come in and sign it.
And then once everybody says they're okay with it, we can sign it. Mr. Jimmy.
Yeah. I'm not totally comfortable with that. We've made some significant changes here, and I think we did it as a group. And I think that a decision letter probably we want to look at as a group, because individually may look at it and say, well, it looks good, but somebody else may bring up a point that we've missed. Why
don't we do this? Why don't we put the signing of the decision letter, Ms. Burke, on the first meeting in May? And I'll sign it.
Well, so it's likely we will still be remote in May, so we won't be signing anything in May.
Right, but
at the meeting.
At least we can do it at the meeting. So
just quickly, a couple of things. One, I believe we talked to I just forgot. We talked to the last meeting about charging stations and bike racks, and I don't believe.
Yes, I have that on my list. I have that on my list.
Not on the
all right, so that'll be added to the decision letter.
Yes, I have that on my list.
And I believe it was stated that the charging stations would be added in the parking lots on the west side also. So.
Okay.
And the bike racks too, both sides. Okay. See, that's my point. I mean, if we're adding things, we're changing things, I prefer to see the decision letter.
Yeah, we'll bring it to the first meeting in May and put it
All
on.
right.
Any other comments on the draft that I proposed? So just keep in mind, Ms. Burke at an earlier meeting provided 1 through 17 already.
Mhm.
This picks up at 18 and just kind of combines what I did and what she did. And then there'll be things added beyond 30, such as charging stations, cleanup, and whatnot.
I hope somebody's been taking good notes.
So, well, the good thing is it's recorded, right?
Well, you can always have faith in your staff. That's what we're here for.
So is everybody comfortable with the way it's proposed, removing the 5 units, making the 6-foot opening? I mean, I think it's a compromise. I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, but I think it takes into consideration a tremendous amount of public input, trying to get the size of the buildings down and trying to make it a better project, so.
I think it looks good.
Mr. Jemian, Mr. Geller, Mr. McDonald?
You did a great job with it, Pat.
Oh,
Outstanding job. I think
so, and I don't, Michael, I don't know what I believe me, I'd rather have it be smaller too. I just don't know if we can get there. That's all.
A phenomenal job, but I think I still retain my. I mean, luckily, I don't believe a special permit vote needs to be unanimous. So, I do think you've done a phenomenal job, though. It's certainly a far better project than it was originally.
Just want to remind everybody that you have a hard stop in 15 minutes.
Okay. So based on everything we discussed, based on the items 18 through 30 something in front of us here, based on reducing the total density from 67 to 62, the total bedrooms from 100 to 93, and the clear opening from 5 to 6 feet, and then Ms. Dentonero and Ms. Burke are going to work on the additional conditions. Do we have a motion or more discussion, or somebody do something?
I'll make a motion to approve the project with all the conditions as stated in this drafted letter, with the modifications that we discussed tonight, with the addition of Mr. Antonero's comments. And we will be having final review of this letter on our first meeting in May.
Okay, do we have a second for discussion?
I'll second it. Jean,
Okay, and just to be clear on the discussion, Ms. Burke, can you go up to the mitigation and stuff again?
Am I not there? Can you?
No, just to be clear, we're going to remove E3, correct? That's how we're getting to the
Yeah,
60.
it says,
Correct.
it says
Okay.
remove.
All right, so we're removing E3, and then could you go down one more, a little bit more? And we're going to add 5% or the CPI, correct, Mr. Jemian?
correct.
And then the clear opening was going from 5 to 6 feet. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the project based on this discussion tonight and this draft letter. Any more discussion? Okay, so I'll take the roll call vote. So this is a special permit, so we don't have to, we could do the site plan and special permit vote all in one, Ms. Burke, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
yes,
Mr. Jemian,
Yes,
Mr. McDonald,
No.
and I'm a yes. So, okay.
4 in favor, 1 against, it passes.
So, all right, well, thank you to everybody. I know it was a lot of work and it was a compromise and thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Pat.
excellent work.
Great job. Really did.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good
Have a
night.
good one.
It is,
Board has to just adjourn their meeting.
All right.
And just, Ms. Burke, so we'll get this over to Jason. We'll just cut and, I mean, I can get you the Word document for this. And so you can
Thank
just
you.
cut and paste and then
Mhm.
we can send it over to Attorney Rollins and then get it ready for our first meeting in May to sign.
Yes.
All right, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
I'll make
moved.
a motion to adjourn.
Right, by Mr. McDonald, do we have a second?
Second,
By Mr. Geller? So before we adjourn, Astrid, I apologize. We really don't have any guidance still on associate members, so I wasn't sure how that worked or not. So maybe we can get some, clear direction on participation and stuff from associates. I apologize for that.
Thank you. I want to say something. I'm not sure if I can, or should I just wait
No,
on?
go ahead. Go ahead.
So I appreciate that I'm learning more about the negotiation process for the better good of the community and the residents. I feel like it is the common thing to say that, if both parties feel like they've lost something, then that's the fairest negotiation. But I like to believe that when the two parties feel like they've won out of a negotiation, then that's the optimal outcome. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Astrid.
Does anybody else have anything to say before we adjourn?
Nope, just thank you to Pat for all you did.
Yep. Did an excellent job with that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That was great.
All right, so motion to adjourn. Did we already do it, Michael and Steve, correct?
Yes.
So, all right, so I'll do the roll. Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Garino,
Yes.
Mr. Geller.
yes.
All right, good night, everyone.
Have a good one.
Night, thank you.
Thank you.